Okay, we're live. Finally. I'm so sorry to everyone.
Here we go. Everyone get in here, quick. Tell a friend. The Seattle Overload podcast is live. We're live on YouTube. The YouTube.
Only 40 minutes late. Let's go.
Would Pete Carroll say tube or tube? I think he would occasionally drop to a tube.
Tube?
Tuba.
Chuba Hubbard confirmed going to the Seahawks this trade deadline.
I don't think that's confirmed.
I just confirmed it. Sources are telling me right now.
I have ridden the tube. Have you ridden the tube? No. Okay.
No. Stop it. You're the reason why we're late. You had to make more tea. You had to make whatever. You had to take a nap and make coffee and tea.
It's Italian espresso. Made from Brazilian and South American coffee. But fine.
Oh, we're live? Oh, shit.
Hey, everyone. Griff's here, everybody. Yay.
Right.
Maddie clap.
No, I can't. I can't. I'm holding this mic.
It's 28-17 Cardinals.
Okay.
And their defense is apparently good now.
Is it though?
Yeah, 2 pick sixes.
I mean,
Gino must do one against a similar kind of fire zone deal.
We'll
anyway,
talk about that.
We will. Welcome to the Seattle Overload film podcast of the week, where we're going to recap the Seahawks' victory over the Arizona Cardinals. As you can see on YouTube, the whiteboard's ready. I've got a drawing prepared, so I won't have to turn around and show my back to everyone and my hunched gait. Ty, Griffin. Let's hear from Griffin. Griffin, how was the tape overall? Are you happy?
So much better, man. Things are normal now. The defense had a really good game. I mean, they flipped the switch. They went from being awful to incredibly good. Not incredibly good for this game. Not saying they're going to be incredibly good moving on. But they had this in them the whole time. Like, you saw signs of it. I mean, you saw signs of it in the Broncos. I think they played well defensively against the Broncos, despite what the numbers were. But the second half of the 49ers game, kind of like the first half of the Lions game, and bits and pieces of really mostly early down of the Saints game, as like we talked about. But it was them doing it for a full 4 quarters for all 4 downs, because they had some fourth downs they had to defend as well. I mean, clearly the themes were this game, narrowing down the calls, which really means narrowing down what they're matching up front with and on the back end, the fronts and the coverage. And which then what that really means is the players are all playing techniques that they're familiar with. And then on top of that, like the rookie corners are just getting better and better. And even Mike Jackson had an okay game. So they're figuring out what to do with the safety. So everything just came together and they dominated the Cardinals. And we can say the Cardinals are bad, which on offense, which they are. But coming into that week, they were like 17th, I think, in EPA, total EPA, or EPA per drop back. And then like 19th in total EPA. So they're like a clustered with average. Cluster with the medium, and Seattle held them to like well below their average. If you compared their EPA per play to the rest of the league's averages up to that point, they'd be like 31st or something right now. So they dominated them. So yeah, it was good stuff.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, well, Griff, when you said about simplifying the calls, I think I'd like to take that a bit further, because they did run a fair share of coverages again in this game. They even showed like Quandre Diggs coming down into the strong hook, like cover 3 buzz. It looked like, or it may have been a bit of cover 1 as well going on there, where they wanted him matched up on a tight end rather than a Ryan Neal or Josh Jones. But for me, the real simplification of the calls is that they continued falling into bear front as their early down base deal, right? Like,
right.
Pretty much, barring like one or two, like first and second downs, they were in their bear front deal. That is after they spent most of the season trying to be in the 2-4-5 even front nickel deal, and they just kept getting run on. And as we've said in this previous tape podcast, that was frustrating because it wasn't working. It probably was more of a Sean Desai thing based off his history in Chicago and sort of what he wanted to do. I think Hurt probably got sold on that because, the idea is that that's more aggressive in the sense that if you're going to get past, you can pass rush better from 4-man spacing with just 4 rushes than you can, in theory, from bare front with 5 down guys with 1 dude having to like loop to contain and it being a bit more difficult on people.
Yeah.
Just the angles and it being a bit clustered up in the middle rather than the even spacing. So, yeah,
I agree with you, actually.
The fact they lent into bare fronts was just so exciting, and they actually worked. So,
yeah. And so when that becomes your new, like, when you recommit to that being like your core front, your core philosophy, whatever you want to say, what you do the most of, that naturally presents the problem of, okay, that's great that you're playing fundamentally sound and everything, but now, because it has a downstream effect for the linebackers and the secondary and stuff, even if you're playing the same coverages on the back end and with some change ups, right? Like you mentioned, but then that kind of puts you back to square one of why you wanted to go into 4 down in the first place, right? Like, well, it's not the best thing for the spacing for a 4-man rush for a couple of reasons. So then you have to, if that's your fastball now, you still have to have off-speed stuff to kind of pick up the slack for the inherent shortcomings of that, and to just keep the offense on their toes. Because again, there's the principle of preventing positive plays from the offense. That's like your main job, but then you also want to generate negative plays as well for them, right? You want to have them going backwards. So the easiest way to do that is, well, interceptions, but you can't scheme interceptions. You really just kind of hope and pray for them. But you can get sacks going. And so it's ironic that in their switch to living in odd fronts, they got 6 sacks on Kyler Murray, and they got 6 sacks from 6 different individuals too. So Maddie, what did you see from the pass rush that was different on a player-to-player basis? And do you think any of that was related to actually being more in bear?
I think it's related more to being in bear in that they were able to get into more 3rd and longs. And so when more 3rd and longs happen, you get into more passing downs. You can, well, a 3rd and long is generally a passing down, right? You can, you can get in your dime calls. You can call in your calls like bonus fire zones, which I know you'd like to speak to as well, and you can also get into fronts designed to get your Darryl Taylors 1-on-1, and you can get it. They were doing that on previous games, but there was just nowhere near as many clear passing down. So that is less opportunities. It's less exposure for their, the offense's tackles, as we saw with Seattle themselves trying to protect their rookie tackle pairing from pure drop back situations throughout this season. And so, I think, again, I come back to, as Chenna Nwosu said in his post-game press conference, stop the run to have some fun. Well, we've heard that before. You have to earn the right to rush the passer, as Clint Hurts phrased it in the past. So the fact that they were able to actually bottle up the run game other than Kyler Murray, and then you come back to the bear fronts and Pete Carroll's history with them back at USC, Vince Young runs all over him from like a kind of spread kind of system, the proliferation of the spread in the Pac-10, maybe, can't figure out when it turned into the Pac-12, and mobile quarterbacks in that conference as well. Carroll sticks with this bear front. They come back to it in Seattle when they face mobile quarterbacks like your Colin Kaepernicks, your Cam Newtons, and then 2020, Ken Norton Jr. is like, well, this might be an idea with how we take the defense. I'm sure Clint Hurt probably had a say on that because he was on the staff then. 2021, they do it even more and they have more variety. Now 2022, after trying this weird experiment, they're back to it. And really, if you think about Arizona, they have that mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray, and they also have the presence of kind of air raid stuff similar to the kind of spread systems that Carroll devised it for originally. And so it's kind of the perfect fit in that sense. But for me, the big thing was, even in the bear fronts that they were running earlier this year, they were more in the mold of the Vic Fangio inside shoulder of the tackle 4-eye technique. So Ty, if you get me up on the wide copy here. So that was called a tight front from Vic Fangio, and that was basically a head up nose tackle and then 2 4-eye techniques. The idea being that they mirror step the tackle from departure and mirror step there. So this, but by doing that, you're kind of, because you're clouding the gap up, right? And you might win into the C gap, or you might stick in your original B gap. The linebacker behind, rather than just playing aggressively downhill, he has to kind of fit off your play a bit more. He has to slow play a bit more. Also, if you're a 4-eye and you're mirror stepping at the line of scrimmage, your first step is going to be more lateral and not forwards. And you're sort of, because you need to be able to mirror and react to where your tackle goes, right? And so that saw Seattle's line in previous games has been identified by KJ Wright and became a hot topic on Twitter. It's sort of their D-line not lining up on the ball, but lining up sort of off the ball, as though to give them more time to really read where it was going. And Seattle was doing this with 2 4-eye techniques. Now, what I saw from the tape, Griff, was they went back to what they did last year, technique-wise up front, where they played 3 techniques. Even if it was a middle field open, they'd play with 1-3 technique on the play.
Yeah.
And the 3 technique position is you're on the outside shoulder of the guard. You can smack him back with a 6-inch power step forwards. And then if you're basically one-on-one because it's 5 down. So you're basically one-on-one. And then from there, you can shed into the backfield. You can play, but you're playing downhill. But it's also a much more obvious keeping off of the guard from the linebacker. And then the linebacker can go and shoot downhill from off that action. And Jordan Brooks this game was completely alive, scraping and getting into the backfield much more often. Cody Barton, on the brief stuff he did play in, was much more decisive. I've realized I've drawn too many people here. Anyway, so this is the nickel front, right, which I've drawn up here. So when they come in nickel, Cody Barton comes off the field, and you've got your safety, Ryan Neal. They played him down to the tight end. Seattle still uses this 4-eye technique, but only when it was to a tight end, right? Yeah. So an extra gap. So it's to help buy time for the safety. And then, but really, like, that was even that looked more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
It just, the way everyone was playing up front was more aggressive and more decisive. And it made the picture behind for the second level linebackers, Brooks often in the A gap, a lot cleaner. And even when they're in middle field open, the only reason they'd go into this mirror stepping kind of more passive 4-eye technique, is if there's a quarter safety behind who needs to fit a C gap. But then how's that any different to having a tight end there? It isn't. So it's only basically if there's a tight end there.
Yeah.
And they were able to run all their middle field open coverages, all their middle field closed base coverages really like fine from this. They even showed some drop 8, which is again a favorite approach against this kind of offense where they're always releasing so many people downfield to just encourage a check down and rally to it. They did a pretty good job on that, but because of some missed tackles. But Clint Hurt was asked about the idea of letting defensive linemen play more aggressively, and he said it's just finding their spots okay and creating more situations for them to be in their spots and do their techniques and things. I let those guys have some fun. There are still other times when they do things within the scheme where they're taking one for the team, so to speak, which I'd say is more talking about the 4-eye technique. But again, part of coaching is finding things to help your guys be more successful. That doesn't mean it didn't happen before, but there are always things that you have to adapt and adjust to within a game plan, which again, referring to Arizona, obviously they took ownership of what they needed to get done. They wanted that and they responded the right way, which sounds more like this was like, is more than just a 1-game thing to me. I'm trusting what I've seen, right? Which is, it seems like a complete change.
So kind of going off of that, I was wondering, how do you feel this specific personnel kind of applies to these changes, and how well do you think that they all fit, how all the pieces fit together here for this change?
Well, I'll interject real quick. I feel like part of it might have been Al Woods not being in there, but Brian Mona is just so much better at center. And I feel like part of it is he just, like I said in the recap, he just reads the game better from there, because so much of defensive line play is split second, keying, reading angles of departure from the blockers, reading the ball and everything, like right off the snap. And he was so reactive and everything. I feel like the three technique really benefits Quentin Jefferson the most, perhaps, just because, he's a smaller defensive tackle. He's like 290. And that's, on a tall frame too. So he's not the most dense guy for his position. So it lets him get vertical upfield. He did get in the backfield quite a bit. And then when you have Mona playing more gap control oriented on the nose tackle, he can kind of fit off of Quentin almost. So like Quentin breaks the running back's angle, and then Mona can scrape back and do his thing. It also lets Jordan Brooks rally to the ball, right? So I feel like that just lets them play. It lets each player lean into what they do the best, the most.
Griff,
and
real quick.
Yeah.
On to your point, it's very relevant. I'm not interrupting you for no reason. Quentin Jefferson, he goes after the game, they just cut us loose. That's less reading and more getting off, which the reading reacting is the mirror stepping. And I feel like the guys we've got, it benefits us. We can get off and cause havoc. I'm not really built for reading. I'm built to attack. The power stepping, three technique stuff you're talking about. So it's just a fun game. And
back to Mona, having a three technique. So like you see the three technique to his side, when that three technique is still B-gap player, he's a B-gap player, whether he's a 4 or a 3, right? But by virtue of him being more on the guard, heavier on the guard, that means when you get like with that picture that Maddie has up there, if you get zoned left for the offense's perspective, so zone right to the defense's perspective, that means that backside guard is going to stay on the 3 more, and that ensures that Brian Mona is getting more of a one-on-one. It's harder to get the combos you want, at least on the backside. On the front side, it can be easier if it's a 3 technique and harder on you. But so, I feel like we saw more of Mona playing more one-on-one. He didn't have as much doubles on him, and that just meant he was dominating a center. And it's, 350-pound nose tackle on a center. The average center weighs a lot less than the average guard, so he's just decimating guys. And that was pretty relevant.
Because what was happening in the past, when they were even running this 2-4-eye tight front for when they were middle field closed in Bear, but they've also, their main call was tight will 6, which was only used to 21 personnel, and that basically is quarters to the tight end and cover 2 away. Now Seattle, when they ran that this game, and because it's against the shotgun, it is a bit different sometimes, and the Cardinals are predominantly a shotgun team, but they still had 1-3 technique. And so what was happening in the past when they had 2 4-eyes, 2 mirror stepping, 2 reading reacting dudes, was like Griffin said, on just basic zone even, you'd have this 3 technique be a 4-eye, and the nose would get comboed and moved out of the place. Whereas now Mona's basically one-on-one with the center, and he's able to almost be an extra player because he can knock back the center, win to the backside A-gap, and on some plays he can even run through. Like, that's how his best plays came. Even Poona Ford was able to play the nose in past years because of that, because of how the 3 technique keeps the guard off people. And that's why, like, when you're playing with 2 4-eyes reading and reacting, then the nose kind of has to read and react more as well. And that's just a different technique and a different thing. And so this, when I saw this, I was like, oh my word, it's the same. It's the same what they've done, and it's working. And they're actually able to shoot. And it made much more sense when Pete Carroll said, we've changed a couple of things. Because I was like, well, yeah, you've played bare fronts more, but what's the other thing? And it's, we're just going to do it like 2021, or like when Pete Carroll was at USC back in 2006.
Right. And I feel like that same principle of having one-on-ones, that also for the run defense, that translated directly also into their pass rush plan, because they had those games and twists up front. You're kind of forcing man protection, especially against an offense. This is a huge part of it. an offense that only protects with 5 most of the time. They're releasing their running back and their tight ends. They're not even chipping with them most of the time. So when you're doing that, I mean, they're just exploiting you've got 5 on the line, so you kind of have to just play man protection. You're not sliding as much. And so then that's why Puna Ford was springing into the springing into the backfield, because you stunt the A gap with the near 3 technique, the nose tackle rolls over, or it's vice versa. But then also, because you're forcing man protection, that means your best interior pass rushers, Quentin Jefferson and Shelby Harris, they have a 3-way go. So when they have their one-on-ones, they can work to the inside if they want, and they know the center is not going to slide to them. So it's Clint Hurts saying, and this is where Clint Hurts in his bag, right? So it's him saying, like, yeah, this is to the detriment of the edge rushers, as in having 2 edge rushers that can fly off the edge. But this is what is working to our advantage. It's the numbers and how we can influence the protection, and then the skill sets that we do have. Puna Ford isn't going to just win the B gap just by killing the guard with the speed rip. It's not what he's going to do. But he still has quickness. He still has some bend to him for a big guy. So you use the numbers to your advantage. You use spacing to your advantage, but you can still get those traits and accentuate them. So you have him coming around on a loop off of a stunt. And now you see those traits flash, and he got into the backfield a couple of times. So they're not going to get 6 sacks every week, but like, this gives them the benefit of spending this much time in Bear means that they're going to get really good at the ways that you can use Bear to your advantage. It's kind of like you become really good at what you do a lot of, even if what you do a lot of inherently has drawbacks to it. You kind of shore up its own weaknesses. This is how they're going to do it. There are other things going on with the edges they did, kind of who they decided to drop and win and stuff. That was part of it too, because Nwosu and Taylor did have good games. It's just that while they had good games, you didn't have both of them flying off the ball at the same time always. But at least early downs.
So could you get into that a little bit more, like with the guys that were dropping, who was rushing, all that?
So part of it was this bonus fire zone that we keep talking about. And Maddie, you probably might want to draw that up. But in addition to that, real quick, I'll say, so like usually you can tell in a 3-4 if you're assuming a 4-man rush, which is the standard mode of rushing, right? The standard rush count, like 75% of the snaps are usually going to be a 4-man rush. If you're in nickel, for example, and the team's playing a 3-4 front, now that it's nickel's now 3-3-5 front, right? It kind of looks like a 5-1. You're going to assume that the linebacker that's rushing is going to be the linebacker that is to the side of the nickel, because the way the spacing works out, it would be difficult to drop both of them into coverage. So that means if they know who's rushing, that means they know who's dropping. So Seattle toyed with that, and they had a couple of snaps where the linebacker to the nickel side, which was usually to the field, to the passing strength, they also dropped him. So they're willing to drop Uchenna Nwosu and Darrell Taylor if it's cover 3 into a hook from the line of scrimmage. They're dropping him deep into the hook. And that's a hard drop, but spaced it's very similar to the spacing you get with bonus fire zones, which Maddie's going to explain. But I think that was really useful. Well, so one, because you're assuming that linebacker is going to be rushing, that means if they are sliding, they're going to slide to the field. That means Darrell Taylor on the opposite side is going to ensure a one-on-one, that he's not going to be slid to. That means you can ensure that he's getting a clean one-on-one look. Part of his problem this year is that he's been getting chipped a lot. So, or straight up rushing into 6-man protection. And he's a guy that needs angles and space on the perimeter. And I think some of his early down rushes that were successful were because he was rushing on the man side of the protection, the weak side of it. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, Ty, before we get into the other stuff, you mentioned about the personnel. Well, to me, when I was writing my article explaining like Cowboys' history of Bear fronts and how I thought Clint Hurt would go, continue what was working, I was like excited because it seemed like they finally actually really had the personnel to do it. Because Griffin speaking about the drops and how they did a great job this game, sort of varying up which outside linebacker was dropping. It was more of kind of like the Boye Mafe and Nwosu in on either edge, where you really got that kind of versatility going, and they could pretty much get into any of their coverages. But last year, right, when they had it was with 4-3 personnel, and that doesn't matter, but it does, because when you've got Carlos Dunlap out there, dropping Carlos Dunlap, one, it looked ridiculous. It drew the ire of some fans, even though it did work sometimes. But also, two, when it was 4-3, it was always, if Carlos Dunlap, I could tell you this, Carlos Dunlap was called the Leo. If Carlos Dunlap, for spacing purposes, if he was to the field, it was cover 3. If he was to the boundary, it was cover 2. And if I can tell that, then obviously other teams can. So it becomes a bit bait, and you sort of have to fire zone, send some pressure to mix it up. But at the end of the day, you've only got so much flexibility. This year, I was like, well, they finally actually got the 3-4 kind of personnel to run it, because you've got Taylor, who can drop. He's slimmed up. You don't want him to necessarily, but he can drop. Nwosu can drop. Mafe can drop. You have actual 3-4 outside linebackers. You have more of them. Last year, I think what scuppered them a bit was the Alden Smith move not panning out. And I said that was a bigger loss at the time. Now, than people may have realized. So now they've actually got the personnel to do it, and they're actually doing it. Whereas at the start of the season, they were running this kind of even front deal where they didn't have the personnel. They didn't have those big edge rushers, as me and Griffin spoke about. They didn't have no one has a boast of other than 49ers and Chargers, right? But they didn't have like one of those weird kind of San Francisco 49ers defensive ends that they always seem to get, where they can set an edge in an even front and yet play light in the box and play too high and all that stuff. Yeah. They didn't have that, and yet they're still trying to do it. Also, the D-line playing the heavy techniques up front, like the heavy 2-eye or the heavy 3 technique, like outside shoulder or inside shoulder of the guard, they were really struggling. And the linebacker group of Brooks and Barton, they were struggling to fit off that. It was all just muddy. The spacing was wrong. The relationship was wrong. It was clearly too radical a move for them. There's a number of issues that have come up there, right? Whereas this bear thing just works, right? It just works. It stops the run, and then off that, they're able to defend the pass. They were right. Now, the Cardinals had a few weird execution things where they looked a bit dodgy, and Now, passing down-wise, to transition back to that, I guess, once you've got them in the 3rd and longs, you can do even more cool stuff. So the bonus fire zone, right? Where it's basically, what's a bonus fire zone? Well, you only rush 4, right? But you are replacing one of the conventional rushers, right, with a non-conventional rusher, so like a 2nd level defender. But the difference, you may have heard that called a simulated pressure, or even like a creeper.
A creeper, yeah.
It's not that, because rather than everyone playing normal zone coverage behind it, which you would do on those 2 plays, you play fire zone coverage. So you tighter coverage, so 3 deep, 3 under most of the time, where seam curl flat, middle hook, seam curl flat, or hot to 2, hot to 3, hot to 2. And then the dropper from the line of scrimmage, he is like an extra defender. And so to trips, you'd usually drop him to trips. And he's called a bonus hook. And what that allows you to do is, if I'm the seam curl flat defender to the bonus hook player, I can really cheat to the seam, because I know that my flat has got a bonus hook in it. I can really cheat my coverage, so it alleviates the stress of conventional fire zone beaters. The other idea is that you have got the player you're sending, the 4th rusher from the 2nd level. He is usually on the back because of the way you've got the protection to slide, because of how you've dressed it up, which is a winnable matchup, rather than, if you're blitzing Jordan Brooks against the guard, that's a bit different to getting him on a running back.
Right. And so, but the other aspect for why I think the coverage spacing of this was so important was, one, if they keep the running back in the protection, great. But the Cardinals so frequently will release him to the flat quickly. So you get 3 strong and 4 strong quickly. The spacing of a bonus fire zone, which you're about to draw up, really just looks like a super flooded cover 3. with 7 in coverage. So you're able to be aggressive, like you said, Maddie, matching the main pattern, but then you've got the spacing that is conducive toward also covering the check down, so you can defend all 3 levels at the expense of a regular 4-man rush. But again, because you are sending that second level rusher, you at least have the element of surprise. So you got Ennis coming usually, on the opposite of the slide, like you said. So he's either gonna find the running back, which defends the running back, or that running back releases and he might squirt through the B gap untouched. So because it's the weak side of the protection. So it solves a lot of problems for them. And like the other aspect of this, it's when it's to trips, which it often was, you're still having your linebacker carry that number 3 receiver. And the Cardinals were putting Zach Ertz, who is a good, talented receiver, if not super fast, right? He's a tight end, but he's a receiver, right? Or you're putting Rondale Moore on the line of scrimmage, meaning like he's literally even with the ball, even with the center, the offensive line. This only works if Jordan Brooks can cover that route. And they threw that route at him all game long. And in this bonus fire zone look and the spacing where they were playing with dropping, the strong outside linebacker when normally he'd rush him. And he was taking that route up and back all game long and stuff like that. And that's just kind of like, it happens so frequently, you almost take it for granted, but like everything falls apart if you can't do that, anyway.
Yeah. So like, for instance, Ryan Neal
let's
sacked.
U-turn back to you, Maddie.
Oh yeah. It's not really a U-turn though, is it? This is old wounds. It was very upsetting last week.
Remember, legal U-turns only. Hashtag legal U-turns only.
We're a big fan of legal U-turns on the podcast.
All right.
So Ryan Neal's first sack, or only sack of the game, but it was the same concept which Jamal Adams unfortunately got hurt on against Russell Wilson. And, again, like Griffin's saying, 5-man protection situations, this is where you can really mess with it, because what they did was they showed Neal in the A gap with Jordan Brooks. Then they backed him out as though he was stacking it. To the Cardinals, they're seen as though, well, what that does is it gets man protection. So they've only got 5. So they're like, okay, we're going to throw hot basically off Ryan Neal. But everyone else, okay, tackle block the end, guard block the tackle, center block Brooks, guard block the tackle block the end. And we'll throw hot off Ryan Neal in a dime situation. Well, it might not have been dime. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And so they see the 3 receiver, which I think was Ertz. It might have actually just been Rondale Moore, Anyway, they see he's uncapped. So they're like, okay, well, that's where we'll throw if we get pressure, right? But it's also probably where we should throw anyway because there's no one over him. But then what Seattle does is they back Brooks out and he gets under it, like Griffin said, but they also back this end out and to the trip side, and he's able to get under and alleviate the stress like we're talking about. That is a very odd drawing. And so Brooks backs out like this. He caps it, takes 3 up. It basically plays out like cover 1, even though it's technically like cover 3, but with the bonus hook, a cover 3 fire zone. And then they slant into a bear thing where the crucial element is the tackle steps down. That gets the guard who's in man on the 3 technique to step down with it. And here comes Ryan Neal, who's been hiding behind Brooks, through the gaping B gap for the sack of Murray. And it's a big time sack to get off the field. And it's how it's how it messes with guys. You're only rushing 4, but you're playing really tight coverage where the stress point is alleviated somewhat by the 4th guy you're dropping, rather than just playing zone where, one, do you really want a pass rusher playing like in a pure zone? Probably not, right? He's got like pretty much no job other than just getting underneath stuff.
Right.
And then 2, everyone else is allowed to play tighter. And so there you
go. We can take this opportunity to discuss like how in these calls how good Kobe Bryant was at the zone aspects of, because like you're trying to get him to match guys, right? Match the seam, kind of play a man technique within zone. Like that's the whole part of the whole premise here. But what did he do when his number 2 like went underneath or something? So like we saw him play his rules of like, well, you zone off and you look to sail from number 3. There was a play where Jordan Brooks is carrying 3, but then he starts to break outward. So Brooks zones off and looks for work, but Kobe Bryant, his number 2 went underneath to that bonus hook player that we're talking about, right? I think it was Mafe. And then Kobe Bryant gains depth and he gets under, and it's just like a perfectly zone matched, perfect pattern matching from the defense. And that principle of everybody playing their rules really well was apparent in every call they were in. Cover 2, cover 6, cover 8.
There was
cover 4.
I had one bust where Neal ended up on the same side as Kobe Bryant and Brooks managed to cover up a bit. But yeah, other than that, way less mistakes. And that's why you have only 6 explosive plays where some of them were really kind of on a play caller, like early rust.
Yeah. There was that one play, that scissors play to the cover 2 side where Neal got turned around and he realized it was too. Yeah, it was just a good beater. Now, so I was going to say, Cliff always has specific beaters. Even when you're dominating him, he still does stuff that breaks your structure, even if the results aren't there. Like back to the
Colt McCoy.
Yeah, well, we don't talk about that game. But back to the back to when they were in Bear, it was like, well, he had a good plan for it. Because like they put Kobe Bryant to the field, right, to the passing strength. They're playing half quarter usually, or sometimes just straight cover 2, depending on the formation. But it looks like a 5-1 box, right? Kobe Bryant isn't in the fit. But if he's to the passing strength, what do you do if you motion that slot over to what was originally the weak side and now it becomes a passing strength? They don't have time to switch Bobby and Kobe. So Brooks bumps over. He's now the C gap or D gap player, and he's now part of the main part of the coverage to the trips. Now Kobe Bryant is your A gap player, all 200 pounds of him. He's now essentially your linebacker. And so Cliff did a good job of manipulating them formationally by getting him into the fit. So there's just little stuff like that going on. So he had good ideas. They just didn't work. Part of the reason why they didn't work was because everyone in the middle was just beating the crap out of their offensive line. So that's kind of like, you can sacrifice here and there if you can pick up the slack here and there. And that's what they were doing this game.
And to Ty's point as well about, personnel again, like, and you saying about them beating the crap out of them, like the interior D line, they have a real rotation. Like we were bullish on that in the off season because we were like, well, it obviously fits. Like you got your Shelby Harris, you've got your Poona Ford, you've got your Al Woods when he's healthy, you've got Miles Adams who comes in, and lo and behold, now he's playing more of 3 technique, power stepping, looks way more comfortable because he's 1-on-1 and has an unbelievable play on the backside of guard tackle counter where he scrapes across and ends up making the tackle. Should also note that Seattle, when they're in this the Bear deal to pair tight ends, so that's a pair. So 2 tight ends to one side. They bumped that side of the thing into under. So rather than a head up nose tackle, they have a 1 tech, and then they have a shaded nose tackle, and then a 5 technique to that side. So on the outside
in
shoulder,
that C gap,
in the C gap, and that places Poona Ford kind of in like it's an easy way of describing it, but in the Red Bryant kind of role, or when Seattle used to play under what Red Bryant did. And Poona Ford's really good in that as well. It's still power stepping, attacking. It's just attacking the tackle to prevent C gap issues that can arise from that and counter stuff. Right. But back to what I was saying, that Monet, he can play some 3 tech if needed. But like they have 6 deep interior defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Jefferson, I forgot about him. Yeah, so they have 6 deep interior defensive line, who are all really good at playing in this more attacking style. And I'm just glad they've gone back to it. I'd love to know the internal discussions. It's been interesting.
And one more thing, I think we should talk about the defense. So you got your base calls, but then is it aggressive enough? You have to infuse some aggression in there to your early downs. Last year that meant bleeding that 3rd down package that they had into the early downs, and it was working for them before Jamal got hurt and they had to scrap it. And they just went back to being sound, but not necessarily aggressive. So what they're leaning on this year really is when they go into cover 3, they've made cover 3 inherently more aggressive by playing rip Liz, so you're carrying 2 seams instead of 1. Problem early on was that it was so hit and miss. This game, they were just really good at playing rip Liz on early downs, where it's just cover 3 matched 2x2 receivers. It was either Josh Jones was down or Neal was down carrying that seam, and then Kobe Bryant probably had his best game of the season, carrying guys. He lost some guys a little bit on inbreakers, and like he doesn't have as much hook help because the linebackers are hugging the running back, which worked though, because like they defended the check down. That was the whole point of this. But for the most part, like Kobe Bryant was covering corner routes well. He did play some inbreakers well. And it's like this whole thing, this is their whole theory kind of coming together, at least coverage wise. Maddie, what did you see though from them in cover 3 though?
Yeah, same stuff. Much better. There's a few things which can be brushed up. That you mentioned the not cover 3, but you mentioned the scissors combination, which got I mean, it's a good beta, but with a bit of refinement, they can play that better, and I'm sure they'll see it again now that it's been on tape against them. And then Brooks sort of, there was one play where I suspect a certain company may have graded him negatively on it, where he didn't need to push over with route. There was a route behind him. He needed to get a bit more depth in middle field open, where it is on him. Like to call it an outright bust is probably a bit unfair, but he shouldn't have.
He just
overplayed it. But
I was surprised.
And the thing is, like he had some amazing drops in middle field open stuff. But the point of raising that is not to bash Brooks, but the coverage is definitely getting there. There's no doubt about it. But they can be better, and they will get better still. Mm-hmm. And so when you tie in that with the fact that they're stopping the run better, and they've actually gone back to what they're good at and what their personnel is good at and designed to be good at, then how can this defense not keep improving?
Right.
Like how can it get excited?
Like, I mean, especially with the playmaking of Tariq Woolen and everybody else. I mean, like, I don't know what their ceiling is, but it feels like, they could put together a stretch where they start knocking on the door at top 10. Like they have that capability in them. I don't know if they're going to be there and then for how long, knock on wood. But you know what? This is what happens when you U-turn. So we'll see if they keep it up. We're going to U-turn over to the offense now. Unless, Maddie, Ty, you guys had any last thoughts?
I'm going to turn you over.
No, that was a beautiful segue, Griff. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk offense.
It's a beautiful segue to say let's U-turn. Because when I tried to say it about Michael Dixon, no, Matty, moving on. No.
Well, Maddie, this was Griff and I's thing. You didn't want to be a part of the U-turn thing.
No, and I don't. I don't like U-turns. I'm living in Britain.
Maddie,
have you seen what's going on with our politics? I don't like U-turns.
You're getting really angry right now. Are you okay?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Are you having a moment here?
I didn't know you were so sensitive about U-turns.
Do you need to step off camera for
whoa, hold on. You guys don't do U-turns over there though, because you guys have roundabouts, right?
Exactly.
No, roundabouts are great. I'm not talking roundabouts. In fact,
you should have way more roundabouts.
We installed a couple more in our town, and accidents went way down.
Well, that's great. I'm really glad. It would be a shame if you had an accident.
Is that a threat, Maddie?
That is very very sincere concern for my safety.
I'm from how far away am I? Is it 6,000 miles?
From Washington? I have no idea.
From Griffin's accident, which may not happen. It's an alibi.
That took a U-turn.
Terms of service.
Excuse me.
Ty.
Yes.
What did we not cover with the offense before we complete this U-turn? I'm looking over my shoulder. I've got my tan signal, my indicator on.
What did you guys not cover with the defense? I think you covered everything with the defense. I was going to ask you guys about the corners, but Griff started talking about that. So yeah, I don't have anything.
Comprehensive.
I apologize, but I don't have anything for you on that front.
So offense, 19 points, 1 touchdown, 4 field goals though. So I mean, they actually put together some drives. They just couldn't finish in the red zone. It still wasn't their best day outside of the red zone though. The general impressions. I mean, Gino didn't have his best game. He was under fire. He had some clutch moments, which is kind of like the inverse of past games where people thought he did well, but then wasn't clutch when it was needed, which I think clutch is a weird word, but I think that applies for this game. I think the four-man rush beat the offensive line. I don't think the offensive line had its best game. They weren't horrific or anything like that. It just wasn't their best game. And then also the pressure packages, I mean, that really put the heat on them. And then there were just moments where I thought Arizona defended the receivers pretty well, like in one-on-one situations. And there was just some really tightly contested things. Like they caught some of them. And then some of them they just couldn't quite bring in. Like Fant had a ball that was broken up. DK had a ball that was broken up. They both could have caught it each. But then the other main thing that really kind of dictated this game was that they schemed DK and Tyler out of the game with their coverage shells.
Which, every time that happens, it's kind of like, can Seattle respond? And
right
in the passing game, at least, and that has not quite materialized yet. Although, Eskridge's role grows, Goodwin's getting open on some downfield opportunities where the ball goes elsewhere. Heck, even, Disley's open. I mean, he probably wouldn't have been if Gino had looked that side, but he's open in the back of the end zone against cover 2, where you're like, oh, it's interesting. So it's sort of, how do they balance, obviously looking for those star 2 receivers with, okay, Arizona's doing a great game plan of like, rolling and Tampa 2 invert or just Tampa 2 and cover 4 and all of that.
Yeah.
Putting one more guy over to the Lockett and the DK stuff, playing some nasty trail and all that stuff.
Now it's not as though the opportunities weren't quite there. So like they had I think 10 targets between the two of them, which is nothing crazy.
Right.
But I think they only had 4 completions, and some of those were like, to end the first half, just vomiting fades or seams, just trying to get a touchdown and also preserve the clock. Right. So
I hate it when I vomit fade and seams.
I know. Something you might want to get checked out. Just like the Seahawks want to get that checked out because they want to score. They want to score touchdowns. So but then you also had the deep bomb to Tyler, right? And you're not going to complete every single post. You're not even going to complete 50% of them off of play action. And they were a foot away or two of completing it. So like there were options. They had chances. They just didn't quite bring them down. Like the one dropped Sluggo. Not dropped, it was overthrown, but it was it played out oddly, but it was still completable. So like they could have came away from this game with still executing in spite of what Arizona is doing schematically. But one other thing I want to say about this, like Maddie, you said, how do they respond when they can't get the ball to DK and Tyler? I was listening to the Cigar Thoughts podcast with Jackson Bevins and Mike Barwin, our pals over there.
Let's go, Mike.
And Jackson made a good point. He said while they were 4 for 10 versus their top 2 receivers, they were like something like 19 for 22 to everybody else. So like Gino was still distributing and getting the ball and stuff. It's just, the yak opportunities weren't quite there, or
big plays.
Big plays weren't. They were defending them. And the other thing was, back to my point about the pass rush, like all their drop back was quick game. Like they're just trying to get the ball out. They're trying to beat this. And I didn't think their 4-man rush was that formidable. And yeah, you had JJ Watt, but he's kind of washed. He's an okay player still. But I mean,
I thought this was JJ's one good game of the year.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he did have a good game. I mean, but it's really concerning when Majay Sanders, who I did not like during the draft process because I thought he was too light, he's bull rushing.
Yeah, Griff, he was like really ill.
That's true. No, that's true actually. But I mean, he was playing ill. Yeah.
But if we just go through those, like the 4 failed red zone trips, and you've sort of talked about some of the plays, but just as I rattle it off. So first and 10, Gino mishandles, undertends snap, has the scramble for 3 yards. 2nd and 7, incomplete Sluggo, as you've talked about, which was kind of there, but not really. 3rd and 7, that play I'd love to hear from you about, because I thought, so they shift across Lockett. It looks pretty obviously like cover 4, but the way that they play certain things is rather than like zoning off, they play like a trail kind of thing. and it's wide cross, but Lockett's running the out route with like a runoff route outside. And I feel like Gino could have pulled the trigger and picked up a first down there. Do you remember that play?
I'm. What quarter was it?
Oh, really early. A
You said it,
timestamp for you is 4:36.
and you said
If
it was
you
like a 4 and 37 or a
third and
2nd and 7.
third and 7. And while you look that up, 3rd and 2. Next time in the red zone, Walker runs into the back of Fant on split zone for a loss of 2. I think Noah Fant was late getting off. Really, he was late off the ball. Then next trip, 1st and 14s. They've got no timeouts. They go empty and they go 5 verts, which is covered up by Tampa 2, which happened. 2nd and 14. They have 9 seconds left in the game. They try a Metcalf one-on-one Metcalf backside of trips play, which is still into cover 4, and the corner just wins, but it's also difficult, right? Then they kick the field goal. Then the final one, 1st and 10, Walker pressing split zone, and he presses it wrong. He tries to bounce it. He's too slow to hit the hole, and that's something that Ken Walker needs to work on. Like, he is still trying to make too much happen at times. He just hit it, because if he hits that, it's like 5 yards even. Like, the crease is there. He just got to hit it, rather than he tries to bounce it front side, which was not there. It looks like it's there, like, and in college football it might be, but in the NFL it's not there, and it wasn't indeed. And then he had to cut it up, and he only got 1 yard. Then the 2nd and 9, they had a play action with a throwback to Lockett, which was open, but unfortunately, and we're getting more to Ken Walker stuff, and he had a great game, right? But also, there's finer details where it's need to work. They had a throwback to Lockett wide open, where they're booting the other way, but Gino was pressured from the inside, and he had to dump it to the flat for 2 yards. Now, the reason he was pressured was Disley was on an island with the front side edge rusher, and he had no choice but to allow inside penetration. They released Fant on a route, who was the tight end inside of Disley, and so Disley had to allow that penetration. Gino was able to roll away from it, so it's fine to get beat to the inside. But the reason Disley was up against the front side edge player was because they were pushing their protection to the backside edge, because they didn't trust Ken Walker one-on-one in that assignment, even with bootleg away. They pushed their protection. And so Gino, rather than being able to throw to the open Lockett on the throwback crossing route, he dumps it into the flats Noah Fant for 2 yards. So now you're in 3rd and 7, and Seattle's concept of trips to the front side doesn't work. Slant route's covered, but the primary thing they're going for was the corner route. The cover 4 corner didn't take the cheese. In 3rd and 7 in the red zone, you're very unlikely to convert. You need a bit of luck, and you need an opportunity. And there was no opportunity to the front side. Backside, Disley's open in cover 2, which I spoke about. But if Gino had opened that way, he would not have been open, because the cornerback sinks under it with their eyes of the quarterback. And there you go. So a lot of stuff going on there. But really, it's like shoddy execution at bad moments where, they didn't maximize the opportunities. And the Cardinals just played better in those instances.
I mean, I really felt like they just got collectively outplayed. And like the scheme was sound for them, because it gives them the best chance to cover those guys. And at the same time, like, Seattle also had good process attacking the scheme at the same time, I think, because again, they had opportunities, but it was just a matter of Cardinals putting themselves in the best positions to have a good chance. And, as chance had it, it worked out for them. On that 3rd and 7 you were talking about, Tyler was open, and if you think about it, it's 3rd and 7. You could pick up a first down there if you can catch and run upfield. But he had the mic kind of encroaching a little bit, and I think he was thinking touchdown to Colby. You see him transition there and work the pocket, but Cameron Thomas is bull rushing Lucas so badly. I don't think he could.
But he's just got to take the first down. I know he's trying to hit the touchdown.
Yeah, he's thinking touchdown is what he's thinking.
And that's what happens. But like, to me, if the pressure's not there, that Mike sinks under that route from Colby easily, because it's cover 4. Like, that's his job. Like, to me, the Mike lets Colby behind him because
I got the play up right now, though. He's hugging the back. He's hugging the check down, and I think it's Simmons that's kind of more really carrying the route. But I still think.
Oh yeah, I remember now. They were walling.
But but to your point, if Simmons isn't seeing pressure in the backfield, he probably drops differently.
That's what I meant. Yeah, I don't understand why he just stick your foot, because he could throw that to Lockett, right? The defender's back is turned. Like, I feel like the Lockett,
and he throws those all the time.
That's part of what was good. So I mean, hopefully that I mean, it'd be silly to overly be concerned about one play. I
Um,
did actually think Gino was a bit like pressing, or maybe it was overly cautious, but at times pressing, times overly cautious in this game. On like, we're literally talking about a handful of plays here, like probably like 3-4 plays. But did you see that, or am
no,
I off base?
I totally agree with you, and I think part of that was frustration that he wasn't moving the ball the way he wanted to. But then also, it's kind of impressive that he was kind of maintaining his composure through how much fire he was under in the pocket. I mean, some of it was rough. Like even on some of his best plays, he's getting hit. Um, he's just getting beat up, and he's not letting that affect him too much. There were a couple of times where, kind of like in the Saints game, even though he was awesome in the Saints game, where Lucas has an early loss, and then that affects how he works the pocket when Lucas is getting bull rushed, but then he doesn't know if Lucas is going to stake or not. Sure enough, he anchors on a couple of them. It's like, they missed an opportunity. He could have gone downfield with something. And it wasn't quite there. But I mean, I think the fact that it's not good to press because that implies you're forcing something, but it's good that in order to press, you have to stick with it at the same time. The fact that he's sticking with it with all that happening. In fact, that probably explains why that thought process and mentality, not to project our own fan fiction onto it too much, is why he was able to do well when they had to on a couple of those drives. On that drive to end the first half to put them, they didn't score a touchdown, but he was moving the ball in the drop back game, right? And they got 3 points. And then on the touchdown drive with Walker's, his canter, on the touchdown run.
It was not a canter. We're talking about the move, not the.
We actually had an equestrian expert comment.
They were not no, that is a lie. You're very loose with the truth.
Once again, we are we're outsourcing this to the equestrian wing of our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Please let us know what that move was. But so anyway, so like when also good adjustments from Waldron. They go heavy personnel. 13 personnel, some snaps of 22, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, or 1 back, 3 tight ends. They're moving the ball with play action almost at will, and you wonder like they should have spent more time with that in the first half.
There was no gun play action in this game, which was there was like 2 in a hurry up situation, which was not really play action at all. And also, like, where was the dig routes? Like, there was so much middle field open. The one time they called dead like coin or Swiss, 3 hitch, 1 dig, 2 down the seam. The one time they called that, they got cover 3, and they were looking backside, and why not do a bit more of that? Like they're playing this stupid.
They need to run it. I think they need to run it from tighter splits when they go into drop back for it, because I feel like the league is adjusting too much to the in-breakers right now. The linebackers landmarks
that's what made it so nasty from McVay, right? He did it from Tripp's bunch.
Yeah, and it's because they want to impose the threat of the go ball with DK on the perimeter. So the spacing of their formations challenge their ability to work the middle the way they've been working them. But what's open then are the seam routes, and they've been hitting the seam routes. But I feel like in order to hit dig routes from these formations, you need an absolute monster dig route runner like Brandon Cooks or Elijah Moore.
I have faith.
I knew you were bringing them up at some point.
Well, Tyler Lockett is he missed his second day of practice today with a hamstring.
Yeah, and Lockett can run those. It's just the minutia matters. I feel like they just need to run those from a little bit tighter splits. What was I going to say? So the heavy personnel work, they're moving the ball. One thing I want to say though, and on the topic of balance, which you were talking about with no gunplay action, because granted they don't gun run a lot, but so even when they go empty 3x2, and like they're still imposing balance on the defense by those stick draw QB RPOs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredible that even when they're in gun, they're like, we are still going to intermix what we can do here. And that's when we see Gino taking off out of empty, right? No running back in the backfield, and he takes off. He's reading the mic. If the mic fucks off and squeezes that stick really hard, Gino's just going to take it up the middle. It's like, all right, I'm the running back. I'm going to go. I'm the run part of this RPO. And that's been really effective for them. It's just cool that they are, every formation that they work out of, they have an answer where they could do multiple things out of it, and defenses can't nail down your tendency.
Yeah,
So
so
they
far
always
they've
have a
managed.
counterpunch.
Yeah, so far they seem to have managed to avoid a bit of tendencies tells. So hopefully that continues. Ty, what did you want to know about the offense?
What the hell is going on with the running backs going the wrong way and all this? What are you seeing on tape?
Well,
Is
I
it
don't
just
know,
as
man.
simple as just like guys are just going the wrong way and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
it?
it's literally that
Yeah.
simple. Yeah,
It's
literally
literally
that
just
simple.
that. Yeah. Because like that,
And
like that's something that I've noticed. I feel like every single week, at least once or twice every single week, and that's
yeah,
like it's stalling drives. Like it's literally killing drives for them.
yep, yep. No, yeah, it's that simple though. Lewis, in terms of like the pass pro, like the rookie tackles were had like up and down games, but they were really kind of. It just showed why exposing them to true drop back situations a lot. Eventually they'll get beat. Like any tackle,
Yeah.
but their inexperience will contribute. Now, Lewis playing on the left side of the line, a left guard, that chemistry with Charles Cross is slightly less was less present in this game, like against inside moves and tackle and
Oh
exchange
yeah.
stunts.
Yeah.
Maybe because of how much different fronts that Arizona was showed in this game. Like, they have the double A gap, they have their like 5 down, that they have the 4 down like over G look. Like maybe
Yeah.
it's just so much of that, but that was kind of off. And maybe because they've been shuffling around slightly,
And
haven't they?
Shane Waldron mentioned that they had a lot of different combinations of personnel and fronts and stuff.
Yeah,
Obviously, they do a lot of things with their pressure packages themselves, but the actual like Jimmy and
the
Joe's, like
groupings.
who,
Yeah,
yeah, and maybe like that threw them off as far as what they're expecting. Um, as far as one-on-one blocking goes, I think the interior blocked pretty well. When they had clear one-on-ones, it was just communications on the movement stuff that you talked about. Um, but yeah, actually, I don't think Cross did that poorly outside of that one sack
no.
from Majay Sanders. But Lucas, I mean, he was getting not ragdolled, but he was getting moved. Like those slow building bull rushes were getting him more than you'd want.
But
So
you could sort of work with that. Like I felt Gino could have
I
gone a bit
agree.
deep in the pocket at times. They was just a bit off.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're not concerned like long term about any of this, right? Or do you think if we see it in like next game, then you're like, oh,
No, because we've seen them scraping their ceiling. I mean, we've seen the range. The floor, like the floor is not good, but the floor is not that low,
well,
and the
imagine if
ceiling
this
is
is their
high.
floor,
Right. I think this is their floor.
right?
I think this game's more their floor than the 49ers game.
And
And the
how many times did they
ceiling
turn
is
the ball over?
right.
Should have
Right.
probably been one. Like that, the Gino trying to thread that in. Like he decided to
Yeah.
throw the ball with the back turned, but should have been a pick. Wasn't,
Mhm.
so that matters.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to know about the offense
Oh,
is how after a bad game they're going to U-turn in Los
respond, Ty,
Angeles.
respond.
In Los Angeles.
Can they turn
Segue.
around?
Yes.
Can they come full circle round a roundabout?
Yes.
Well, Los Angeles, the city of lights. The the spread.
You're such a dummy.
I like being dumb. This is the spread. Seattle is plus 6.5, and the over under is at 51.5.
Okay, I have a more concrete answer here. You may make a legal U-turn in California
Oh,
across the double yellow line when it is safe and legal in a residential district if there are no vehicles approaching within 200 feet. That's okay. That's good info. But our thing is the
Thank you for
U-turns.
literally answering my question.
The thing is,
Appreciate
the
that.
U-turn has already been made, so it doesn't matter if they're legal or the legality status, because we're at 180 degrees now.
Mm.
Go ahead, Maddie. Now that I'm
No. I just gave you the gambling stuff. Ty asked, "Can the offense bounce back?" Well, based off, you know, we covered it in our newsy podcast. Make sure you check that out if you haven't. But based off that Broncos game, they were busting coverages in the first half, but in the second half they looked pretty good, and they brought a lot of exotic pressure. Well, not exotic, but exotic is in the eye of the exotica. But
indeed. I think
they,
I think
they pose some difficult problems. But really, this defense is very similar to what Seattle was
yeah,
doing, or it is kind of doing. And I mean, it's not going to be. I mean, I'd be surprised. I hope not, but I would be surprised if it's not going to be as like multiple and like personnel like shuffling as the Cardinals game.
I agree. I mean, on that note, by contrast, the Chargers are pretty simple. Like
Yeah.
Staley isn't. So like they play a lot of cover one in addition. So like when they're not, they play a lot of too high, but when they're not playing too high, they play cover one basically. And then occasionally cover three as a trips check.
With star man corner JC Jackson.
Yeah, who's getting toasted right now. So if they play cover one, good luck, because it doesn't matter what formation Seattle's in, under center, pistol, gun, they're going to shred you. Gino's going to be needling throws in, and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are going to beat your corners downfield.
And Staley seems pretty in the mind of, I'm going to go middle field close if you start running on me. Like that Broncos game, the gun run was popping big time.
Right.
Like he doesn't have the same dudes up front. And so what happened is he's like, well, I'll put an extra guy in the box. At which point, DK Metcalf, say hello. Tyler Lockett, say hello.
Which is why I think pistol will feature this game, because like they ebb and flow with it. Like they'll go between 5 snaps a game to like 15 snaps a game with it. Like they'll ebb and flow a little bit. I think they'll be closer to 15 snaps this game, because your whole menu's open in pistol, right? Like for the things that we've talked about ad nauseum. So if they're in too high, you can run your mid zone stuff. You can run at them for real. You can attack them, and if you do that well enough, then they'll play gapped out, and that means the go ball's there. But if they at the same time, if they don't play gapped out though, and you're in pistol and you're doing all your other stuff, especially if you're running out of trips, they reliably play half quarter to trips. Even though it's too high, you can manufacture that one-on-one weak with DK Metcalf. So we might actually see, Gino launch like an inside release, go ball to or fade ball to DK. We might actually see that, because that weak safety will be poaching. He'll be sitting fairly low, even though he's in the shell. And you'll have a one-on-one, even a bigger one-on-one than you have versus cover three or cover one. So I think that will be a variable. It'll be really important to see if they can work that. Outside of that, though, it'll just be working zone windows and everything. Glad we're having a good time here. I might have missed something. I did not miss anything.
No, we're disagreeing with you.
Matty centered himself for the first time in the history of the show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without all the Twitter comments saying, put your camera in the right position.
On the flip side, though, they have albeit injured, they have a flamethrower masquerading as a quarterback in Justin Herbert. But they don't go deep. They run so much quick game.
Yeah,
it's very hard to sack. You can extend the game. So I feel like we'll see more of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we're going to see more of the bonus fire zones, more of the bonus fire zone drop spacing, even if it's not technically a bonus fire zone.
Drop 8 as well to just
drop 8. You're just going to get underneath those windows, man.
It's all just like spacing Hank so that curl flat, and then like all curls. Like I don't understand.
And then if
their receivers wore double digits, which they don't, it would look like an all tight end, like Carolina Panthers style offense. And like Staley's outright said that that's what they're looking for, like big kind of receiver types. But like maybe it's a game where you just see straight cover 2 as well, like because the quarter side otherwise is going to get picked on a bit. But then I guess if you drop into the quarter side with your edge, then maybe you make it work. But that is going to be interesting. Big test for the tackling, and like in terms of like seeing Woolen against the bigger receivers is going to be really exciting. and then hopefully Mike Jackson doesn't get too bodied.
Agreed. Yeah. And then outside of that, it's just going to be containing Herbert because you can put pressure on him and he'll avoid sacks still. He can release the ball at any angle off platform. You think you have him, but he can still get the ball out. So I don't know. They're going to have to be coming into the game to tackle. So
there you
How
go.
much do you think the rib injury though is kind of impacting him on that front,
Yeah.
if at all?
I mean, a
Hold
tiny
up.
bit, but he seems to be in a bit of pain.
I'm going to interrupt here. The
Mm.
Panthers, sorry to be so rude, the Panthers are trading Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers. It just happened.
Wow, for
Wow.
what? For what? What
Draft
return?
picks, according to Adam Schefter.
No way.
Wow.
Schefter always has that news. Draft picks. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Well, the pod is extended.
That's quite the U-turn right there by the
That's
San
not. That's
Francisco.
not a U-turn. Idiot.
Okay, let's can we get some score predictions? I don't know.
Oh yeah.
score
So
predictions?
Chargers score predictions. I think the Seahawks win. Wow, bold.
Ooh, whoa.
I never say
Didn't
that.
see that one.
31-2.
So gonna say 7.
17.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do you know
I'm
what?
gonna-
That's a bit high. Like Eckler's gonna get this famous last word, but
We
he's
got to
gonna
watch
get-
out for
he's
the
gonna get-
screens, right?
He's gonna get bodied. Yeah, big screen alert! Screen alert! Big,
Screen
big-
alert.
23-20 Seahawks.
Hmm.
multiple
And
day two
it's going to be
picks.
23-20, but like a convincing 23-20.
Okay, like Chargers are down like 23-13 and score like garbage time touchdown or
Yeah, they're
something
like
like that.
throwing it
Yeah.
around it, like
Or maybe
yeah.
maybe like a special teams touchdown or something. And you're like,
Uh-huh.
no, fuck that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, multiple day two picks.
Multiple day 2 picks for
That's good
CMC.
because
Because running backs matter, right?
it's,
Yeah,
no, it's good for
that's
the
definitely-
Seahawks that they're draining out all their day 2 picks.
Yeah.
Do they have a
That's,
first round pick, or if they like? Oh my word! Look at this, guys.
oh no.
Oh no!
Oh shit,
I'll be-
we're in spooky season.
It's Halloween, baby. Only 10 days,
Yeah.
right? Oh no, 11 for you guys.
Matty F spooky. All right, I'll get my pick in here while you're fixing your light or what have you. I'm gonna go. Look, there's no Joey Bosa. There's likely no Keenan Allen. JC Jackson is bad right now. That secondary is kind of questionable overall. But Lockett might not play. I'm gonna go. I like Griff's score, but I don't want to just copy Griff. So
Sounds
I'm
like you're
gonna go with
copying Griff.
I'm gonna go with a completely original score here. 24-21 Seahawks. Boom.
24-21. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take either any of the 3 scenarios personally.
I mean, I like Matty's the most, of course, because like winning by 2 touchdowns would be very cool. But yeah,
Well,
Matty.
there you go.
I mean, Matty was the closest last week. He did say the Cardinals were scoring like 7 points. and they
This is the
scored.
thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tired of being disrespected. These predictions mean a lot, and we put a lot of work into them, a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of analysis, and the fact that it's not
You
taken
look like you've,
sincerely
like,
by you guys.
You look like you've descended from the heavens to tell us
Well,
what's
here
gonna
we
happen on
go.
Sunday.
Ain't that fitting?
Look like you have
No.
the light from Valinor at your back. You wouldn't know what that means, would you, Maddie? Well, you've read the books though, right?
What books?
Hmm.
You're not even a real Englishman that you
I
haven't
didn't
read.
hear what you
Yeah.
said. I didn't hear what you said. Do you mean Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Have you read the appendices or the Silmarillion? Are you that much of a nerd about it?
No, I'm not
That's
really.
fine.
that.
Galadriel, Stan, Titan, Gonzalez reporting.
Also, I have this problem where like all of my stuff that I've like read or learned, I've like forgotten because it's all been replaced by football. Like it's really
Yeah.
bad. Like
Yeah.
everything.
I feel that.
You
I
have
feel
to
that.
diversify your exposure to pop
My
culture so
portfolio.
that you don't become a zombie.
No, I do. You're right. You're right. There's more important things. Except there isn't.
Um,
Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you. We'll be back after the Chargers game. We don't have to worry about the Mariners, so we'll be back basically
Maddie,
after.
why? Why, Maddie?
But what
That
if the
wound is
Kraken
still
win?
fresh. It's still fresh.
And yeah, we'll be back after that game with live reaction. Until then, thank you so much. Please like the YouTube video if you haven't already. There's people in here. Like it. We don't get as many likes as watchers, so I know who you are. Please like the video. If you're listening, please subscribe, 5-star reviews. We appreciate you. And until next time, this has been Seattle Overload at C Mike Spin Move, at Dane GNZLZZLZ, and at Matty F Brown. And then follow at Seattle Overload. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Love you guys. Bye.